Once upon a time, in a land of the West, there lived a king and queen who had 3 lovely daughters. The 2 eldest were indeed so beautiful that when they grew up and appeared at court together, for they were near of an age, no lady there could compare with them, and all who saw them allowed that they were by far the fairest maidens in the whole kingdom. But when the 3rd and youngest princess, whose name was Psyche, being now 15, was brought to court in her turn, she as much surpassed her sisters in beauty and maidenly majesty as the moon outshines the stars. And they were filled with jealousy, for now they were praised no longer, no one had any eyes for them when Psyche was by, and the fame of her loveliness spread abroad in the city and through the whole country. Hundreds of people, both citizens and strangers, flocked to her father's palace to behold this marvel, and when they looked on her, they were overcome with awe and wonder, so that they bowed down and worshipped, crying out that Lady Venus herself was come among them. Soon the rumor was carried to neighboring countries, and from thence over a great part of the world, that this glorious and incomparable maid was no mortal, but none other than the goddess of love and beauty, born of the sea foam, whom the Greeks called Aphrodite, but other nations call Venus. And innumerable travelers from far countries came by sea and land to learn the truth of this, who, after seeing Psyche, went home and declared that she was certainly Venus, or else a new and more adorable goddess had appeared on earth. And so the worship of the true Venus fell into contempt and was utterly neglected, her famous temples were deserted, her images left ungarlanded, and her altars no longer smoked with burned sacrifices. For all her honors were now paid to Psyche, who was forced against her will to receive them from the folk. Every morning, crowds of worshippers assembled before the palace and, when she appeared, they burned sweet incense before her, and humbly offered flowers and myrtle garlands. Now, when Venus saw all this, she was greatly enraged against poor Psyche. "What," said she to herself, "was it for nothing that the shepherd Paris, whom Jove himself deemed worthy to judge, gave me the prize as fairest of the immortal goddesses? Must I be scorned and set at naught by gods and men because a wretched mortal dares to set up herself as excelling me in beauty? Nay, this girl, whoever she is, that usurps my honors, shall bitterly repent it, or I am no true goddess." With that, she called her son Cupid to her and passionately prayed him, if he had any love for his mother, to avenge the grievous injury done her by a false, wicked, and impious mortal. And having told him all the story and where Psyche lived, she bade him fly instantly to punish her as she deserved. "With all my heart, sweet mother," answered Cupid. "Only tell me what I must do. For you know I have no thunderbolts, like Jove, and my shafts do not kill, like Apollo's." "No," said Venus, "but I do not wish to kill this wretch. Death were too short and light a punishment for her. I would have her suffer such misery that she will long in vain to die. So let one of your magical burning arrows pierce her heart, and make her fall in love with the poorest, the ugliest, and vilest man in her father's kingdom." Cupid promised to obey, and when Venus had kissed him and armed him with his golden bow and crystal quiver, away he flew into the west. Meanwhile, Psyche, with all her beauty and fame, had but a sad life of it. Her 2 sisters, who were the proudest and vainest creatures alive, envied and hated the poor child for the honor and worship paid to her, but little pleasure she took in them, for she was of a meek and gentle nature, very loving, simple-minded, and timid. The praise and admiration lavished on her beauty fairly bewildered the girl, who honestly thought her sisters far lovelier than she was. As for being adored under the name of the new Venus, it frightened her so much that nothing but obedience to her parents made her endure it. But they, in the foolish pride of their hearts, continued to make a show of her, decked and crowned her with the flowers of Venus, and forced her to play the goddess as best she might. However, it was not long before these parents began to repent of their folly. Many suitors came for their 2 elder daughters, who were soon splendidly married to 2 great lords from overseas, but no man, high or low, sought to marry Psyche. This seemed so extraordinary to the king, her father, though the plain truth was, he had himself to thank for it, for who could presume to court a goddess? That he suspected the gods were envious of his daughter's glory and meant to keep her unwedded in revenge. So he resolved to take counsel of an oracle. Now there was in those days a famous oracle of Apollo in a certain town called Miletus. Thither the king went, though it was a long journey for him, and having prayed and offered sacrifice, he inquired of the oracle what he should do to get a husband for his daughter. And Apollo gave him this answer by the mouth of his priestess, who chanted it forth in verse after her manner. Let Psyche fair be clad in mourning weed, and set on highest rock, her spouse to find. For she must wed no wight of human breed, but a fell serpent, fiercest of his kind. On plumy wings he sails the starry skies, subduing all things in his burning flight. The gods themselves, the puissant and the wise, with willing minds be subject to his might. The rivers black through nether realms that flow, and chaos, and old night, his empire know. So the king went home again in great affliction and told his wife the dreadful fate that was ordained for their daughter, and they wept and lamented together many days. Then, not daring to disobey the oracle, they began to make ready for Psyche's marriage with the serpent, or rather, as too plainly appeared, for her miserable end. You would have thought, to see the preparations, that a funeral and not a wedding was toward. The palace and all the city rang with dirges and wailings. Instead of marriage hymns, black torches were lighted, the bride herself was veiled and robed in black, and all the bridal train were dressed as mourners. The tears and entreaties of the whole people moved the king to put off the fatal day for a while, but at last he would delay no more, lest the gods should be wroth. There was a steep and high mountain not far from the city which was crowned by a great rock shaped like an altar. Here they brought luckless Psyche in mournful procession. Her father and mother walked beside her, followed by their household and friends and a great multitude of the common folk, all weeping and lamenting most bitterly. When they were come to the hilltop, the king and queen began to take leave of their child, but words failed them. Sobbing and crying, they beat their breasts and tore their hair in a frenzy of sorrow. But Psyche said to them, "Oh, my dear and honored parents, why do you break my heart with the sight of your weeping faces and the rending of your grey hair? Alas, it is too late now for those tears. When the folk made a goddess of me and called me the new Venus, then was the time you should have wept over me, knowing my poor beauty was soon to be my ruin. For now you may see, too late, that the wrath of offended Venus has brought your child to this miserable end. But since there is no remedy, I pray you leave me to my fate. I am ready. Nay, I long to meet my bridegroom, for I think his true name is Death.